everyone, my name is Minna Al-Faiz and you're watching From Scratch. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about meringues. For today's recipe, we're going to focus on French meringues. But the three different types of meringues out there are called French meringue, Italian meringue, and Swiss meringue. So for today's recipe, we're gonna have eggs, sugar, cornstarch, and vinegar. Right after the break, we're gonna be making the recipe together. Welcome back, everyone. Before starting our main dish of the day, I'm gonna talk about a couple of things, and that's gonna be the components that we're gonna cover for today. We're going to be making a French meringue to make a pavlova cake, and the pavlova cake is going to consist of a base of a French meringue paired with a lemon curd, some fresh fruits or fresh berries, strawberries for today, as well as a whipped cream, which is going to be made into a crème chantilly. Another thing I'd really like to talk about is the use of scales. So this is quite important because the use of scales is actually going to be a very accurate measurement that you can always rely on. So swap out all of those cups, measuring cups, teaspoons and spoons, and swap it in together with a scale. Another thing I'd really like to talk about today is how to properly crack an egg. So that's going to be the main component of our pavlova is eggs. How you're going to crack it is a swift crack on a flat surface, and then separating your yolks from your whites through this very easy movement, and always have some bowls prepared right in front of you. I'm scaling it up to 110 grams, so that's exactly what I'm gonna look for. It's very important not to get any egg yolks in your bowl, just because that's an introduction of fat, and that's going to basically prevent our pavlova or meringue from actually whipping up. So that's actually enough. That's all I need. So what I'm going to do right now is transfer this into my mixer and set that aside. What I'm going to do is I'm going to lower down my mixer, and this is quite important. Always have a mixer at home because whipping up meringues is quite a long process. So you want to add a mixer to your collection. It'll cut down from that time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start it off on a very low speed. While this whips up, what I have right in front of me is the sugar, and I'm going to take my cornstarch and vinegar. While this gradually whips up, what I'm going to do is I'll very slowly and very gradually add in my sugar. You never want to introduce a lot of sugar all at once. That's going to disrupt the fluffing up process. All you want to do is kind of incorporate some air, let those egg whites whip up, foam up before introducing any sugar. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. It's going to take some time, so let it do its thing. Don't rush it. You want to go low and slow, just because you want it to turn out perfect in the oven. All right, so I reached to the point where the foam is actually taking over the full amount of the bowl. So I'm going to slowly, right now, start introducing the sugar. And it's very important to go very, very slow. So that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm just going very, very slowly, adding in the sugar into my egg whites. Trying to go in one corner and not introducing it all around. Just because you want to focus on one corner, you don't want those sugar crystals to go around the bowl. This is quite a long process, so you're looking at some timing between 10 to 15 minutes where you're actually whisking. That's why it's quite important to have a planetary mixer at home. So what I'm gonna do right now is I'm gonna let you guys go on break. We're gonna come back and I'll explain the next process. Welcome back, everyone. So what did I do during the break? I had my machine going for quite a long time, around, let's say, 10 to 15 minutes. You want to go low and slow, as I said. What I have right in front of me is a stabilizing agent. I have some cornstarch or corn flour together with some vinegar. What I'm going to do is dilute it in the vinegar, and this is going to really stabilize my pavlova in the oven. It's going to help with preventing my pavlova from breaking apart, weeping, or even creating some sort of liquid after a while. So what I'm going to do is create something called a slurry, which is basically just diluting your corn flour or cornstarch in some vinegar or water. So this is exactly what I have right now. I'm going to add it into my machine, and I'm going to whisk very slightly just to make sure that everything is incorporated together. So what you'll see right now is the perfect peak for a pavlova right here. What we're gonna do right now is transfer our pavlova onto a tray and pop it in the oven. Gonna grab my bowl and a spatula, and what I'm gonna do is I'm going to gently just put in my pavlova, just dollop it right in the middle and create kind of like a dome shape, and this is gonna look like a cake after it bakes. So it's very rustic, it's very quick, it's very easy to make at home, and it's very delicious. So that's exactly what we're gonna be making right now. What I'm gonna do next is very quick technique, which is to grab your spatula and kind of push it downwards. So what you want to do is kind of prevent those pointy edges. Those tend to burn in the oven. Although our oven is set at 150 degrees Celsius, you still want to avoid some pointy edges because we're going to be putting it in the oven for quite a long time. So this is exactly what I'm doing. You want to kind of create a center in the middle where you're going to have the other components that we're going to be making to kind of layer them on top. So very quickly, very rustic style, we're going to spread it out and then quickly pop it in the oven. So the more height you create and the more, let's say, surface that you create, the longer it'll cook in the oven. So you want to kind of create an even surface, not so thick but not so thin. So you want to cook it for a faster time, kind of creating a circular shape to mimic the shape of an actual cake. So that's it. It's quite easy, as you can tell. What I'm gonna do right now is pop it in the oven. We're gonna go on break. When we do come back, we're gonna be making the rest of the components. Welcome back, everyone. So while we were on the break, I quickly reset our station, and what we have over here is ingredients that we're gonna use to make our lemon curd. For our lemon curd, what you're gonna need are eggs, butter, sugar, lemon juice, and lemon zest. So first off, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab our container that we're gonna cook in, and I will start by putting in all the ingredients we're gonna use for now. And that is eggs, lemon juice, as well as sugar. Before doing anything, I need to quickly whisk all of my components together and just initially start to melt down those sugar crystals. And that's quite easy. All you're gonna do is just whisk all of the ingredients together and set that aside. Keep in mind that you could always go with the same procedure and the same ways that I am going forward with these recipes. I make my pavlova at the beginning. While my pavlova is in the oven, I'm making all of the rest of the components so we could put them all together towards the end. After quickly whisking everything together, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna set this aside and I'm going to start by zesting my lemon zest. It's quite important to start with prepping everything that you need beforehand, because once you start cooking, specifically with this recipe, you wanna make sure everything is prepared. Just because if you do leave everything at the very last moment, you might risk your lemon curd overcooking. You might end up with some sour scrambled eggs, and you really don't want that to happen. So what I'm doing is I'm quickly just zesting my lemon zest to be added towards the end. Do keep in mind that the butter is not added at this point. The butter is only added towards the end when I have fully cooked my lemon curd. So what I'm doing is I'm just zesting my lemon, making sure not to go over the zest twice. You don't want to get those white parts into your zested parts, just because that'll add a lot of bitterness into the dish. So once you collect all of the zest, just going to empty it out into a separate bowl and set that aside for later. What we're going to be doing right now is turning on the stove on quite a low speed. You don't want to go very high at the beginning. You want to go on low and then get that cooking. A key tip to always keep in mind for lemon curd is let that lemon curd kind of start to bubble. You want it to come up to a boil, but you need to always constantly whisk, never stop. If one hand feels tired, use your other hand. So with whisking, you'll get quite a lot of foam. And a key kind of tip to keep in mind is once your lemon curd is starting to actually cook and get to the desired, let's say, doneness, all of that foam is going to start to disappear. And that's a tip to keep in mind. So I've got a lot of bubbling action happening right now. What I'm going to do is be super careful. I'm going to lift it off when I feel like it's too much bubbling action. And then go back to the heat once it's actually needed. So I've reached the proper consistency that I want. What I'm going to do is I'm going to switch off the heat. And as I said, I am going to grab my butter and I'll put in the full amount of butter. And the butter here is going to help with adding some flavor as well as helping with solidifying my lemon curd. You'll notice that your lemon curd kind of gets quite watery as compared to as it was before adding the butter, but don't fear, it is going to solidify in the chiller. After I've visibly seen that all of my butter pieces have melted away, I'm going to strain it and then add in my lemon zest. Quick strain and then adding in the lemon zest, and then it can go in the fridge to chill while my pavlova is cooking. As I said, I'm just going to add the last component, which is our lemon zest, right into my container. Mix it in very quickly, cover it, and place it in the fridge. And we'll be right back after the break. Welcome back, everyone. We're on our very last final stages of today's episode. What we have left to do is a creme chantilly and chop up our strawberries. But for our creme chantilly, it's a super easy and simple component to make. All you have is whipping cream, some icing sugar, and vanilla. It's gonna add quite a balanced flavor towards the end of our dish. The reason for that is because we have a pavlova that's packed with sugar, a lemon curd that's packed with a sour component, and you've got a very fatty component that's gonna really help balance everything out. So what we're gonna do right now is start by whisking our whipped cream. What I have is a very fatty whipped cream. I'm gonna pour it in our very handy planetary mixer. What I'm gonna add next is some icing sugar. As you can tell, it's a very small amount. We're not adding that much. I'm gonna add it in the beginning. And towards the end, what I'm gonna add is some vanilla. The reason why I'm gonna leave the vanilla towards the end is because you wanna kind of assess whether or not you can add so much vanilla, just because you might tamper with the texture of the whipped cream. So just gonna start by whisking. So while this is whisking, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start by chopping up my strawberries. My whipped cream, a very key component to keep in mind is that my whipped cream is super cold. So you always wanna start with that. So while that is whisking, I'm gonna start by chopping up our strawberries. And what I'm gonna do is just going to remove the stems and set those aside. Always keep an eye on your whipped cream just because it might over whip and you're gonna end up with butter. So I've reached to my desired peak. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add in some vanilla at this point and then keep on whisking it just because the vanilla is vanilla essence. You wanna make sure that you bring back that good peak that you reached after adding the vanilla. So my whipped cream or creme chantilly at this point is ready. I have my chopped strawberries and my pavlova is still in the oven while my lemon curd is in the chiller. Once everything is done, we're gonna easily assemble everything together. So we're gonna go on a quick break and come right back for the assembling process. Welcome back, everyone. So we're at the very last final stage where we're actually going to be assembling our pavlova. So a note to keep in mind, I've had my pavlova in the oven at 110 degrees for around an hour and a half. I've had it preheating at 150. So the first step to plating is you have to be delicate because your pavlova has created kind of crunchy exterior with a very mushy and kind of like a marshmallowy interior. So what we're gonna do first is we're gonna top it off with our whipped cream, which has been made into a creme chantilly. And you're just going to dollop that on top. It's a very rustic dish, as I said before, or very rustic dessert, I would say. It is called a cake, so you want to put that all over. You want to spread a nice amount. And you're not looking for some sort of design. All you're doing is dolloping it on. Next, what you want to add is your lemon curd. And same goes to that as well. You're dolloping it on top, spreading it around. Could even move your spoon around just like so to get a nice amount everywhere. You want that lemon curd to kind of show, the colors to come through. It's gonna look really beautiful at the end. You also don't want to add so much because the lemon curd is quite sour, so you don't want to add too much to it. So the next thing I'm gonna add is our chopped strawberries, and that's gonna go all over again, very rustic style. You want a good coating all the way through. You want to make sure that you've got a bite of everything in one plate. The last thing I'm gonna add is our strawberries to add a nice pop of color of green. And there you have it. And there we have it. We covered our topic of the day, which was meringues, where we did pavlova and paired it together with some creme chantilly, some lemon curd, and some chopped strawberries. I'll see you next time on From Scratch.